I reckon you can go.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, today marks a very sad day. It's the end of Mr. Paul Walker's 5 years in Nestlé. Paul, as many of you, bloody hell, the team are just arriving. Well done.
Well true. I didn't want you here.
Those of us that were in the business 5 years ago remember it very well, because Paul was the first of the hordes of Antipodeans who now grace our business to join us. And with that, Paul brought a new kind of laid-back nature to our business, shall we say? And never more so than actually at the start of that period was when the old smart casual rule first came into the business. And on the first Friday, Paul turned up in shorts and a pair of thongs, saying, "This is smart casual in Australia." So that was quite a challenge, and I think a number of managers then had the challenge of managing Paul, with Mr. Field joining the business, and Paul's aversion to ironed shirts and ties that went all the way up to the top, and shoes that were a different colour to the traditional shoes that were with the suit. So I think there was a few people who had that challenge. But so Paul joined the business and went into CCSD, and he joined part of a dynamic trio of the time, which was himself, Nick Cook and Saffron. And their role was, as is the role of all food teams, to try and get food back into growth and try and return it to profit. And I think you were successful in your successful-ish. He reduced the deficit a bit in his first year. I don't know. But that's where we first saw Paul's legendary passion for our business. And he really, I mean, the one thing you could say about Paul over the years, he's absolutely passionate about our business. And he had to learn a lot about the food business that he was selling. And I was reminded the other day, he was at a meeting in Rashleigh, and someone called him and said, "We haven't got a clue about the difference between a gravy and a bouillon." And there was Walk, stepped to the front. 5 years later, he was still able to tell you what the difference in a gravy and a bouillon was. And the other thing that was really interesting about that time was this business is completely legendary for having no stats on what's going on. So it was about this time that the food business first started getting this fantastic string of information from a company called Data Monitor. And we go, this is really, really good data, very good information, really spot on for actually going and selling our proposition. And it was coming through and going on all the presentations, and we were sort of grateful for having it. So I said to Paul, "Where's this coming from?" He said, "Oh, you know, mate, me and Nick just sit and we make up the number we need." And then what we do is we either add a little bit on, we put a decimal point and a little bit just to make it look really accurate, to make it look like it's work. The other thing that Paul at that time was famous for was he was involved in a lot of the conferences at the time, and as is normal on this event, I've asked a load of people to send me any anecdotes they want, and by far the number one request that I've had was, please tell the elephant story, the elephant racing at the conference story. But actually, being a responsible person and not wishing to set a bad example to the team, I'm not going to talk about it. You can tell it later.
I found Andre's email the other day.
Apparently, the elephant was called Sophie. This is the Moulin Rouge conference, and the elephant was called Sophie, and it started the evening with 4 legs and 2 ears, and finished with slightly less. But I can't talk about it. The other thing I will tell you about that conference, though, was I don't know, those of you who were at that conference will remember that Paul and Susan Gregory sat down and were trying to talk about the role of food in the business. And I don't know if you remember it, but Paul was having dinner with Susan, and Nick Cook was the waiter. And they sat down to do the presentation, and they sat at the table, and Susan was being Susan, which was very sort of upright and proper, and Paul was sat there saying, "How you doing, doll?" and all the Australian stuff. Nick Cook, the waiter, came with the menu, and the menu was supposed to be the script and what was going on. So Susan gets the menu, opens the menu, there's a full frontal naked picture of a man in there. No one ever knew that, and Susan, bless her, kept an absolutely straight face. As Walks and Cook go. Socially, Paul has led from the front, as many as you will know, and again, many people have asked me to recount tales from the wild nights out many of them including alcohol, women. But again, I can't go into that. If you want to know, ask him later. There are loads of stories on this. And the other bit that I should talk about is Paul's famous love of sport. I'll talk a bit more about cricket later, but cricket was a big part in his life, and they went off to India with some of the team and went to see a lot of cricket and saw Australia lose a few games of cricket over here, just at key times. Horse racing was big, and golf. And the other good story that people have asked me to recount is about the Flying Irons Golf Day, which Gucci organises. Paul Walker famously turned up with no bag.
No, had a bag.
Had a bag.
Won a bag.
Rubbish bag. But won a lovely bag. He turned up with a handicap of 28, having played a lot of golf. Absolutely walked the day. It was a complete bandit performance, and won this golf bag. They all went to the pub in the evening, and the gentleman he was playing with was so distressed with the deceit he'd shown in writing his handicap on that piece of paper. They actually put the bag in the fireplace and lit the bag. Beautiful bag, suddenly no bag anymore, just the frame of a bag, and the boys asked to leave the pub. Paul has brought that passion into the channels, and again, Paul's been instrumental in the last few years about bringing channels to the front of the agenda, and really passionate about how we bring that channels role forward. I have to say, never more so passionate than when he stood up at the brand planning last year. Some of you may remember this, and just pleaded with us to remember that the real battles weren't out there, they were in here. So, quick summary. Paul, thank you very much for being you. I think is probably the best way I can say that. Thank you for the passion you've brought to our business, for the energy, the fun, the colour that you've brought, and for getting the work hard, play hard, balance just about right, sort of, sometimes. Best wishes from all of us to you, Claire and Macy, for a successful time in Australia and a new life over there. And anytime you're back here, do come and look us up. I'll go on to the presents now, if I may.